and welcome. We're back. This is the next episode of Watch Science. I'm Michael Michaels, and welcome to our new sets, the graphics, the show, the openings. This is just first of many changes you're going to expect as Watch You Want becomes part of an exciting new brand and new experience, Watchbox, coming in November. Today, we are talking about, we have a lot of interest about more complex chronographs. So we're going to be delving into the CH27. We're going to be dissecting the CH27. It's going to be a multi-part segment. Today we're going to actually tear it down. In following segments, we're going to go ahead and actually do some repairs to it and reassemble it, do case work. We're going to do everything on this watch. So I wanted to kind of make it out just more a broad perspective of the watch instead of just doing the teardown. But I want to start with a couple of questions. A lot of people make comments and stuff because they've seen me tear watches down and I'm not wearing these. And they see me not wearing the finger cots. The way I address that is I'm tearing the watch down. And as the watch is coming apart, I need to be able to feel everything with my tweezers. I need to be able to feel the end shakes, everything else of that watch. So that, for that reason, I don't wear the finger cots as I'm tearing the watch down. That's not to say that, putting the watch back together, I don't have these on, because I do wear finger cots putting the watches back together, because that's when, once the watch is cleaned, that's when we have the problems with oils, contamination, any kind of rust. I brought along some pictures that I want to go ahead and pull up too, and just show you exactly what we do once these watches are torn down and why it's not as important. Tearing the watch down, it's going directly into a cleaning machine. A lot of people, I don't know if anyone's ever out there have seen what an actual watch cleaning machine looks like, and this is why I brought some pictures along of the watch bank and the watch cleaning machines that we actually have here. So if we can go to the first picture here, and this will kind of give you an idea of what's going on. Where are we at? And we'll see if we came back up now. Do we have it? There we go. This is our watch bank. These are two ACS 900 cleaning machines. These are automatic watch washers. And the third one down on the end is actually a pre-cleaner. The movement that you're going to see me take down actually went through this pre-cleaner prior to me actually taking it apart. The reason we do that, we want to pre-clean the parts. We want to get a lot of the gunk out of there. And I talked about this before, about getting out the gunk in between the pivots to actually be able to feel it, If we can go to back to the slide. There we go. This is our ACS 900. This is one of the cleaning machines that we use, and this is actually the watch in here that I tore down today. And the tear down was actually this morning. It's as close as we can get to doing it live. And hopefully that'll be coming someday. And we're going to go to a quick little video as to what this looks like and how this machine runs. And there's our little washing machine. And the watch is actually going into there. This is a 3-bank cleaner, and this is a watch. This is a ammonia-mated cleaner inside the first one. And we're going to go ahead and play that again, I think, if I can. It's an ammonia-mated cleaner that, and with ultrasonic in the first one, it goes through a rinse, then it goes through the last one, and to me the most important one, it goes through a complete hexane bath. What that hexane does, it's going to remove any residual oils, anything that's in there, so when that watch comes out, it's going to be bone dry. And that way, when the watch comes back, any oils that were transmitted from me and my fingers as I'm tearing the watch down are completely washed away. That watch is bone dry, and that's the only way it's going to be able to accept the oils and the lubricants that we're putting in there, and they're going to hold in the right position. So for those people that think that we have to wear finger cots tearing the watch down, here they are. Because now I have my fingers back and I actually feel what I'm doing. With that. So let's talk about the CH27. CH27 is the Omega 321. It's a beautifully designed and built chronograph. It's extremely complex as compared to the 861 or the 1861. It has more parts, it has more adjustments. The biggest problem is there are no parts left for the watch. So if there's any kind of issues or anything, that watch, if it's an Omega, has to go back to Switzerland. There are other manufacturers still using the CH27, and that's the fun part about it. I'm actually wearing on my wrist right now Roger Dubuis, which it's a bi-retrograde. It is one of my absolute favorite watches. And this is actually CH27 powered in Geneva seal. And this is just an absolutely gorgeous execution of a CH27. And again, it's one of my favorite watches, and that's why I brought it along. The other things we'll talk about are the CH27, because of its age, there are no real manuals available from Omega. There's manuals available for the 1861, step-by-step manuals on adjustments, parts, lubrication, everything. The manuals don't exist for the 321. However, there are an older set of manuals that I do follow when I do stuff like this. And if we could switch over real quick, and this is what I'm actually going to use. It's called an Assemblograph. And this was a series of books put out in, I believe, in the 1940s. And they're available digitally now. They're fantastic volumes. Each volume is one full watch, and it's a complete breakdown of those watches. And here we are. Just gives you the parts, full parts breakdown of the movement. And it's so cool because this is very old technology. You'll look at this, and the people that have worked on the 1861 compared to the 321 see a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences as well. And we're going to get into some of those differences because I brought a couple samples along here. And with that, I want to start not with the CH27, but I want to start with some tool prep. And people talked about screwdrivers. How often do I sharpen them? How do I sharpen them? There are different ways to sharpen your tools. There's different ways to take care of stuff. I have my own preference as to how I like to sharpen my stone. This is the stone I use. This is just a very inexpensive Fordham tool. It's a medium grit. I sharpen my screwdrivers on a side draw. So when I get into here, I'm going to be going side to side on this, which you'll see. I don't want to go down a line, because this way it's actually going to give me some bite when it goes into that screw. And again, we're biting on the sides of the screw. On the flats that you see on the top, we're not biting the bottom of the screw. So I'm going to make these as dead flat as I can, but at the same time, they've got to be dead parallel. So I'm actually checking them, and I just don't want any kind of curvature to them. I want them dead flat. I want them parallel. And this is always done before I'm servicing the movement. And actually taking this movement down, you'll see me stop a couple times and readjust screwdrivers for different screws, just because you have to really protect. I treat all these movements. The one I'm tearing down is an Omega 321. It's not a CH20, it's not a Geneva seal, but I'm treating it the same way that I would do a Geneva seal watch. And that's kind of it's a good practice to follow all the time. And so I'm checking the screwdrivers, I'm checking everything. I have a little piece of Rotico to clean everything off. And I go through this procedure daily. This tool is always on my bench. I've used multiple stones. I've used a lot of different things. To me, this is the greatest thing. I go through 2 of these a year. It's a diamond stone. It's fantastic though. And just so I wanted to bring that along just to show everybody here. Now right here, I'm actually adjusting the height of the screw. So it's going to tell me how deep I'm going into the screws. I'm looking for a nice dead flat. I'm looking for dead parallel. I don't want to see anything like this because that says my sides aren't parallel. I need to be dead parallel on these screwdrivers. So again, I wanted to bring that along just to kind of show everybody some of the prep that's done prior to even working on the watches. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and dive right in. We're going to dive right into the video, and we're going to start with the CH27 teardown. And as soon as I find it here, there it is. And here we go. This is what I would like to point out. This is a CH27, and this is Lemania, the 1861 right next to it. You could see a lot of similarities. You could see a lot of differences. What I like about the CH27 better is it has a Breguet overcoil. It's a much more refined movement than the 1861 is. Not that the 1861 is a bad move by any stretch of the imagination. You also see a couple things here. We have the column wheel. This is a column wheel chronograph, and this has the cam. And we will get back into that too at a later date. This is going to be down the line. We have different there's different systems, different operating systems. So we will see that. We will explore it. We will discuss it, the differences, because a lot of people have interest in that. So we're just we're doing a little comparison right here. We want to see the differences in these movements. This one actually, this 1861 is actually the calendar version with the moon phase. So it has a couple extra pieces up on top, and other than that, the top side, the dial side, is almost identical. And here we go. We're going to go ahead and start the teardown. And this is, to me, this is beautiful. This watch has been pre-cleaned. It's my estimation the watch has probably been serviced one time. This is a 50-year-old timepiece. And for something to be in this good a condition, I was actually shocked when I came out of the pre-cleaner and it just lit up the way it did. It's absolutely a beautiful watch. There are a couple of screws in there that I'm going to go ahead and refinish at a later point. It's just going to be it's going to be a lot of fun going through and dissecting this watch over the next few segments, few weeks. We're taking the chronograph bridge off here, and again, everything I'm doing here, yes, there's no finger cots on. We don't need them because the watch is going to be washed again, and it was today. Again, this is the chronograph bridge. This is what holds down both your minute recorder and, if I can stop for a second, this is your chronograph wheel right here, your seconds hand that's in the center, and this right here is your minute recorder. There we are. That's our minute recorder right there on the top, just outside of the, just on the stem. What we have here, this is our fourth wheel, and this is what drives the chronograph. And this works, almost all the chronographs that are not vertical clutch work off the fourth wheel. The Zenith El Primero works the same way. They all do the same thing. And they're all driven the same way. We're going to get into a very specific way to pull that. It's not high tech. It's the way they've been doing it for the last 75 years. So I'm just, I'm just going through, making all my checks on this watch as I take it apart to see what kind of repairs are going to have to be made. I'm making a mental note of some of them, of some of the finishes that I'm going to want to do, because this has a beautiful brushed finish. It has polished edges. This is a nicer finished watch. So we're just doing a little tear down here, and I'm trying my best to keep my hands out of the way. We actually went through a different camera angle on this one, and I think it turned out really good, though. We actually came from the front side of the bench on this. So I'm hoping everything. This right here, this is our hammer. This is the hammer for both the chronograph runner, and let's back up just a second here. When you hit your reset on your chronograph, this piece comes slamming down, and this one right here engages your chronograph hand, and this one engages your minute recorder. And what those do, they come down and they hit, and that's what sets everything back to zero. The hands don't care where they are. You put the hands where everything is set. Everything has to be at zero. You put the hands on there, and then you're fine. There are adjustments that can be made to this hammer. This hammer can be lengthened. It can be shortened. It's lengthened actually by hammering it, and you actually draw the metal out. Then you have to reshape everything because you have to have them both set at the same place. One other thing I'm going to point out on this is this little hook right here, coming right here. There is a pin in the CH27 and also in the 1861. It holds it back. When you actually start your chronograph, it comes back and a pin comes up and engages and just holds that back. When you go ahead and hit your reset, if you can hit the reset, depending on the position of the column wheel or your cam, it'll slide that pin out of the way and your hammer drops. It's a very clean system. The hammer's spring powered. It's just a very sharp, definitive reset on this. So I'm just doing a little examination of it. I'm deciding do I want to refinish this or not? Do I need to put a new brush finish on it? I'm checking the surfaces. I'm checking for any kind of rust, anything on this. This is the chronograph wheel. And the chronograph wheel has a couple important features on it. And let's see if we can get into them right here. There's one of them right there. This is the heart. And when I talked about the hammer coming down, the hammer will actually come down and it'll impact it right on this side, and it's going to slam it back to zero. That's all we have to do. It goes back to zero. The minute recorder has the exact same one, which is right here. And it's just good. All they do is they hit, they send it back to zero, and we're good to go. On the bottom side of this is the finger that actually trips your minute jump. Making sure everything's in good shape, making sure everything's where it's supposed to be. You'll notice one other thing too. The power is not let down on this watch, on this movement. There's a reason for that. It's because you cannot get to the click spring as of yet. The click spring is actually buried underneath a bunch of levers. It's buried underneath the switch that turns on the hour recorder, which is on the dial side, and it's all powered from the dial side, which we'll actually get into as well when we get further into this watch. I'm making further checks. I'm checking integrity of the screws. This is the tension, checking for the tension on the sweep pinion. If you don't have correct tension on there, when you start your chronograph, your hand's going to actually chatter. We don't want the hand to chatter. They have to be smooth. This one runs at 18,000. It's going to be a little steppier, but we never want to see that hand drop. And we don't want to see it drop because coming up the other side, it's going to be good. But if it's dropping going down, it's gravity. And we have to kind of fight that gravity by having a spring underneath. And as I said, I go back a lot of times and I'll readjust my screwdrivers depending on the screws. Just because the screwdriver is the right width does not mean it's going to fit the same screw. So I'm going a little narrower, just trimming things down, and I do this all day when I'm working on the watches. And we are actually taking apart the brake, another very important part in the chronograph. When you stop your chronograph, you have a chronograph running, you go to stop it, and then you have to make sure that hand doesn't slide. It has to lock everything in place where it is. This right here is the brake, and that is what actually stops your chronograph. And what it does, it actually comes in contact right there. It's a little spring tension in the back, that little tail. It comes in and actually rests up against the side of your chronograph wheel. And that's what actually stops the chronograph and just lets it. So when it re-engages, this actually pulls out of the way. And we're going to do a little comparison here real quick. And I have the two movements side by side. This is actually the plastic one here, is actually the brake on the 1861, I'm sorry. And that's actually the brake. It's the same parts. Geometry is way different though. And so I just like to show some of the comparisons when I can actually pull them up. It's nice having both movements on the bench at the same time right in front of me. It's not too often you get a 321 and you actually get to tear down. And that's why I like to document as much as I can, and be able to show people. This is an interesting thing right here. This screw right here. I hope everyone can see that. There are a couple lines across the top of that screw, and when I pull it out, I'm actually going to try to make, try to show it better. There's 3 lines across the top of that screw. Instead of the 1 line down the middle, there's 3 lines. Anytime you see 3 lines, that's a reverse thread screw. And the reason it's reverse thread is because it's going to have tension going clockwise. If it weren't reverse thread, when you'd operate that chronograph on and off with the springs, it would actually loosen that screw. So what this is made to do, because the force is actually a clockwise force, it's going to keep it tight because it's reverse thread. And the biggest mistake you can make is trying to take a reverse thread screw off the same way you take a normal screw off. That just doesn't work. You're going to break it right off. The screw will just snap. So we're going to go ahead and adjust everything, check the screwdrivers. A lot of times I'll use a screwdriver that's actually wider than the screw itself because I'd rather be wider than narrower because I just do not want to scratch the sides of that screw. And you can see me actually turning anti-clockwise here, and I'm taking this screw out. It's a reverse thread screw. It's the only one on the movement. There are a couple little idiosyncrasies in this movement that I'm going to show later when we're going back together about adjusting eccentrics, adjusting the cams. It's just a lot to this movement. And we're going to do a little comparison again. This is the switch that actually transmits the power, or the on and off to the hour recorder, which all is on the top of the dial, or underneath the dial. All the hour recorder parts run off the barrel on this watch, not unlike a 7750, but it is a little different than a 7750, which I'm going to go in depth on that as well in this segment when we get to the barrel itself. And excuse my fingers, but we're working here. And we're going to go we're going to jump just for a second and see where we're at. Here we are. I'm operating, trying to show right here. This is the operating lever here. It's this whole lever right here. This is your start stop that you push. This is the lever. This is our pivot right here. The start stop, what it's doing is it has a finger that's right back in here that's actually pulling the column wheel right here. It pulls it in a circular motion. So that column wheel is always spinning. Every time you click it, it goes to another level. The column wheel is a 3-position switch. It's on, off, it's reset. the way the reset works is you have the two columns, it allows the hammer to come through it. If you try to hit the hammer, if it hits one of the posts, you can actually break a column wheel. I've seen quite a few of them broke. Again, there's none left, they're extinct. So you're not gonna, if you have any kind of damage like that, you really want to look for that ahead of time. We have the column wheel, everything's working beautifully on it. We're gonna go ahead and take the lever off now, the start-stop lever on this watch. And we're gonna pull the screw. There's going to be one more little screw in the back that's going to be holding it down. It kind of tucks it down. And this is actually a two-piece lever. And again, a column wheel, it pulls it. It pulls that column wheel, no matter what kind they are. A lot. I don't think I've seen too many that actually hit a column wheel that actually pushes a wheel. Everything works on levers. Levers are our friends. You know, it's basic geometry. We have a long part. You put the fulcrum down lower. You have more tension, more travel at the top end of the fulcrum. A lot of the watches, a lot of the way they were originally designed, it was just basic geometry. It works. They did it. Now everything's designed on CAD systems. It's a totally different architecture as to how they're made. Again, we're talking about a classically designed watch here that's just phenomenal. I'm glad to see it's still in production. Watch Yoda asked, are parts for a 321 easy to get? There are very few parts left for this watch. There's some screws. You can get balance staffs for it. You can get mainsprings, stems. Not much else. You're not going to get springs. You're not going to get, I'm talking about lever springs. You're not going to get operating levers. If you have a rusty one, you're in a lot of trouble. The watch is probably going to have to go back to Switzerland. I know Omega has parts. Roger DeWee has parts. Patek Philippe has parts. But unless they have those house names on that watch, they're not going to service that watch. This one, again, just happens to be in just absolutely beautiful condition. A lot more better condition than the case it was ever in, which I actually brought along to show. And we're talking about a 50-year-old watch here that's getting new life brought to it. And we're slowly getting down. We have most of the chronograph parts off. And we're going to take off one more operating lever spring. And this is just it looks like a big hook. And it imparts power to both sides. It's actually the coupling spring, and it's actually the return spring for the operating lever. So we're going to go ahead and take that. I'm not worried about mixing screws up in this because all the screws, they can only go in one place in this watch. There's a lot of different screws, but they only go one place. And again, this is the operating spring. This right here is what pushes, whoop, we don't want to use that color there. And we have an operating spring right here. That's what actually engages the coupling. And this right here is actually the return for your start-stop. So when you feel the start-stop, that's what's actually pushing the button back out. So we're checking that. Again, all the parts are in beautiful shape in this watch. We're getting down to the point where this is actually the hook that actually pulls the column wheel. And as I said, it's just a regular finger hook. It pulls it. One of the interesting things about that is even modular chronographs, the ETA 2894 uses that same hook design, which is nice to see in their column wheel chronograph, even though it's a modular. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to pop off the column wheel and we're going to take a nice look at that. And I'm going to jump ahead just for, there we go. Got the column wheel, it's under spring tension. This is, again, the column wheel, and I'm going to stop for a second. And when we get into here, because I have an exploded view, I have a close-up view of the column wheel itself. People hear about column wheels, they hear about cams. So we're going to take kind of a little look at this, and I'm going to give this a shot here and see if we can't do this. And this is actually from the assemblographs. And this shows right on top here. This is the column wheel. And you see the bottom little sawtooth, and that's what actually pulls those fingers across. The columns themselves, here they call it a castle wheel. That's the old one. It's a column wheel. Again, the fingers are up. The fingers that stand up actually stop or allow engagement of parts, of the coupling parts. While one piece is inside the gate, the other piece is riding on top of the gate. So you can't reset it while it's running. This is not a flyback, obviously. So we are going to go back here and see if this will pick up where we were. And there we go. Oh. And we're here. Come back a hair. Let's go back to where we let the power down here. Give me one. There we go. This is the fourth wheel driver that's actually being pulled off. This is a 3-finger prong that we're actually using to pull this off. It's a 5-spoke wheel that actually pulls off of 3 fingers. 3 little fingers come underneath and pull it up, pry it off. That drives directly off the fourth wheel. The fourth wheel makes 1 rotation a minute on just about every modern watch. So that on one end of it, on the dial side, you have your continuous second hand. On the back, that's where you have your chronograph drive. And we're going to go ahead and let the power down. Coming up, I'm actually checking right now. I'm checking the balance on this watch because I did time it prior. Timing this watch is badly out of, it's not out of poise, but it's out of beat. I'm going to want to pull this watch back into beat. So I'm making some checks. I'm going to leave this balance in because I want to see everything cleaned out of this watch. And I want to understand what kind of adjustments I need to make before I get back into it or before I start the reassembly of it. So again, tearing a watch down, it's not just taking it apart, throwing all the parts in a basket, cleaning it and putting it back together. It's you got to take it apart and you've got to ask yourself what's going on with that watch. What kind of service does it need? What kind of intervention is it going to need? What kind of improper intervention did it have ahead of time or prior to me getting to it? Again, my estimation, this watch has been worked on one time. It could have been factory serviced. It's very clean. These parts right here, this is actually the minute jumper. These are all the minute jumper parts. Extremely complex for a simple chronograph. And that's what I love about it. You have the little spring, the spring itself underneath the tweezers. That's what puts the tension on. The centerpiece right here is actually, that's more the fulcrum. And then we have the jumper itself with the finger is right here. That's what sits on top of the minute recorder wheel. Every time that chronograph comes around, when it comes around 1 minute, you see the minute recorder jump. It's actually flipping this. The interesting part about this watch, this thing actually has eccentrics on it, which is an adjustment. We're going to get into that later. It has an eccentric, though, of what kind of depth there is, where the reset is, just to reline everything. It's just beautifully built. We're going to go ahead. We're going to, here I'm showing the minute recorder, and this is how it's. Oh, we have a question from Captain Z. How old is the movement? This movement came out of an Omega dated 1965. You know, so it's a 52-year-old watch. And what I love about it is it's 1 year newer than I am. So it's in great condition. The case has seen its share of damage. I'm doing a restoration on this watch. I'm doing more of a preservation to it. I'm saving the hands. And I'm just doing different. I'm not changing the dial. I'm changing the crystal. I'm changing the pushers for water resistance. I'm changing the crown. I'm not really changing anything else to it. I'm not going to change the look of the watch at all. I'm going to keep it as vintage and beat up looking as I can, but I want a good solid watch. And that's what was requested for this watch. So we're going to actually pull the bridge off, and I'm taking the train bridge off, and like I said, as you see, the balance is still in because I know there's something that isn't completely lined up in the balance, and I actually want to get in there with everything else gone, and I want to be able to see the interaction between the escape wheel, the pallet, and the balance when everything's at rest and everything's wide open. Checking the screws, finding out which ones need polished. There's only 2 screws, if I remember right, on this watch that actually need to be refinished. Just a beautiful piece. And we're going to have 3 screws here for the bridge, exactly like the 1861. That's absolutely no different. The bridge is not the same, but just the geometry and everything else is the same. Rasmus asked, is the 1861 a better movement than the 321 or just more modern? The 321 is a more complex movement. The 1861 is I don't want to say it's a dumbed down version, it's a manufactured version. There's been so many more 1861s made than the 321. I love the 1861. The 321, because of its age, it takes a lot more intervention to it. A lot more servicing is involved. There's a lot more adjustments. It's a lot more intricate. It's not the same movement to service. It takes probably twice the time to service it as well. A lot of that has to do with there's no parts available, as we discussed earlier. The movement itself, they're both great movements. I love them both. I love when I get to service them. So that I'm never going to turn a service down on either one. This is one interesting thing that I wanted to really focus on. This is when we get to the crown wheel here, which actually transmits the winding to the. May as well break this down and show real quick. This is our crown wheel, and that actually transmits power between our sliding pinion and our ratchet wheel, which is the silver wheel on top. And so when you wind the watch, we have rotation here. Let's try it. We have rotation here. Oh, here where we are. There we have rotation right here. It transmits rotation to here, which transmits rotation to your mainspring. And that's when you're winding your watch. That's exactly what it's turning. You're turning the multiple parts, the stuff that you never see. And on this one, actually, there is one tooth that's actually damaged on this. However, in the winding, it's very, very smooth. You don't notice anything with that. It's up in the air yet. I'm going to try to source one. I'm going to see if I can't find one through some of my sources. It's up in the air if I'm going to be able to get it. I'm not that concerned about it. And we pause it right here. I can actually show you. That is the tooth right there that's missing, the one that's right on top. And again, it's one tooth. If it were two teeth, you'd actually fill it in the winding. This one is one tooth. I'm not that concerned about it. It's still a very smooth wind. We have a little bit of wear on the bridge. Right there, we could point that out. We have a little bit of wear right here. We have a little bit of wear underneath the crown wheel. Not a big deal. We're not going to worry about it. This watch, again, it's just in great shape for its age. We're going to jump forward a little bit. This is what I want to talk about as well. This is the mainspring. The mainspring has a few parts to it. What we have, and if I'm going to pause this just for a second, I'm going to go back. I'm going to show, where are we? Right here. This is a bigger picture of what's going on with the barrel. This is we got a tension spring on top, held down by two really, really tiny screws. But this pinion in the top is actually what drives the hour recorder. So on this watch, the hour recorder is shut off. And when the hour recorder is shut off, this acts like a clutch, where the barrel keeps turning, but it'll hold that pinion in the center. When you engage your chronograph, it's actually going to start running. So we'll go back to our teardown. And right there. And you can actually see the different parts right there. And we're going to go ahead and take off the top. These screws are so tiny in this watch. When I first started working on the Omegas, these are a couple of screws that actually scared me. Now these things, they look massive to me now. Everybody had to start somewhere, I guess. So we're gonna take, and the one thing I learned on this is you take one screw out and you take it off. I don't know how many it's actually spring tension underneath there. If you take both screws off, the one goes flying. You can see how there's our fly shit. And we're gonna go ahead and take the other one off, and you'll see the different parts in this, the breakdown, and you'll see actually the pinion that's gonna come off. And the pinion is what engages with your hour recorder. All the minute recorder, chronograph, everything's on the bottom side of the movement. On the top side, which is the dial side, there's our pinion right there. And the pinion either engages or it's disengaged, but it runs directly off the barrel. And it's just the spring tension gives it a little bit of friction, so it actually rides onto that barrel. But not too much so when the chronograph is shut off that we lose it. And so those are the basic parts for the hour recorder. We're going to jump ahead. This is one of the things that I really wanted to show as well. One of the reasons I didn't start on the dial side of this watch is because of this plate right here. This bridge actually is the barrel support right there. The little hole right there is actually the barrel support. So if I would have taken this off, the barrel itself has no support and everything would have let go. So that's the reason I start on the chronograph side. Normally I like to start on the dial sides, tear them all the way down. Couldn't do it on this watch. And then again, this is our hour recorder right here that drives directly off that barrel pinion. This is the brake for the hour wheel. And you can see this is how it would operate from the bottom side of the movement. And this is actually that pin that came up, the switch that turns it on and off. The one more part we have here is going to be the hammer. We have the hammer right here that's going to come around and engage when it goes ahead and we hit the reset on it. We have our hour wheel, which the hour hand connects to, and our cannon pinion is left. So we're going to go ahead, pull the cannon pinion, go back on the other side, take a few more parts out. This is one of those movements you have to go back and forth. You have to go on one side, go on the other side, because I don't want to pull everything apart and then have to go back and have something just hanging, unsupported. So we're taking off our fourth wheel, and you can see fourth wheel is going to be right, our center wheel's right here. We're checking it. Again, wheel's very clean, no problems at all. This is our fourth wheel. And if I can get just the right angle, there we go. Right here, this is where that wheel that I pulled off drives off of. This is our chronograph drive, and this is where the second hand goes on. So this is our fourth wheel that actually, drives the escape wheel, and this makes one rotation every minute. So that's why they drive everything off of that. Again, continuously in motion, we tell it when to engage and when to disengage. And we'll carry along. And now we've already isolated where the problem is in the balance. I know how I'm going to fix this. I want to do a close inspection of this. This is a Breguet overcoil. It is a very tall balance staff. In perspective to a lot of other watches. It's beautiful. They still use it. The one thing that they make different on this one that the new watches have is this has a fixed stud, which is right here. So if I want to pull this watch in a beat, once I center the hairspring, that's always the first step, is centering that hairspring. Once it's centered, if that watch is still out of beat, I can't pull it by turning the entire balance. What I have to do is actually turn the collet on the balance wheel. We're going to do this in a later episode. We're going to demonstrate how this whole thing is done as this watch goes back together. And that's why this is going to be a really fun one to just explore all the way from start to finish. On the back side of the balance cock, you have a little slot where you can actually lift underneath, and that's when it's a little pry spot to actually lift off the pins. And here comes our balance. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to really protect it. And I like using a balance tack. I know a lot of watchmakers just like flipping them upside down, especially with a hairspring this long. Okay, we have a question from Cameron Fraser. How can you tell when a balance is out of poise even when it's still in the movement? Timing machine. Poise, time the watch. Time the watch. As long as your hairspring is centered, you're going to run a time test on that watch in multiple positions, and you're going to know if it's out of poise just by your delta. If you're running fast in one position, then another position, again, as long as your hairspring is centered, then you're going to know it's out of poise. If your hairspring's not centered, you're never going to get an accurate reading. You have to go ahead and do first things first. If you don't go ahead and center that hairspring first, you're never going to figure it out. You're going to be chasing yourself. These are going to be good topics to actually address on future shows and actually demonstrate the different timing aspects. We're going to bring a time machine in and do different things. Pulling the pallet out of this now, and again, I wanted everything out of the way before I went ahead and did it. And again, the pallet, underside of the pallet, it has little ramps that you can actually just to lift it up, because the pallet arbor is just so unbelievably fragile. So we have to come straight up with that. If we come on any kind of an angle whatsoever and we don't come straight up those pins, we're going to snap that pivot off. And it's been a long time since I've broken one of them, so I don't want to change one again. And I'll show those ramps here in a second, and right there, you got the ramp. And that's made just to actually pry and come up underneath. And the stem is one part I'm going to change on this watch. We have a little bit of rust right there. That's not a good thing, because it's going to actually tear into the bridges. Stem is readily available for this watch. That is one of the parts that are available, so we will be changing that. I actually have it already. We have our winding pinion and clutch wheel, or sliding pinion, as some call it. And this is what engages either the setting or the winding, depending on its positions. The wheels slide in and out. We're going to demonstrate this a lot. We're going to show a lot of different functions of these watches. And we're going to finish. I'm going to fast forward here just a little bit. We're going to finish tearing down the dial side of this. This is the hammer that I spoke of. That actually comes in, just like the hammer on the movement side, on the lower side. This comes down and actually engages on the hour wheel itself, hour recorder. This is our set lever bridge that we're taking down. 2 screws. And this one actually has a safety screw on it as well, which they did away with on the 1861s. They went to actually just a bigger bridge itself. Same geometry, they're almost interchangeable. We're going to go ahead and pull it out and pull out the set levers, everything else, and we're, for the most part, done with this teardown. And we're gonna pull some jewels out, and that's pretty much it. William Banks asked, how long has it taken me to reach a level of servicing? 321 is a scary movement. It's not something you want to do, you know, straight out. Any chronograph isn't. My first chronograph I did was I was probably 5 years into it. It was not a 7750, which is ironic enough. It was an El Primero. And my instructor at the time, I'll never forget it. I had all my parts laid out. I had everything laid out individually where they went. And I went and got a cup of coffee and came back, and I had a pile of them. And I looked at it and I said, what happened? And Mr. Bash said to me, he looked at it and he said, I know what you're doing. And he said, you're separating the parts so you know where they go. And he goes, as long as you understand what they do, then you're going to know where they go. And so I've always kind of followed that, and everybody that I instruct, I always tell them the same thing. As long as you understand what the watch does, what the part does, how they interact with something else, then you're going to know where it goes. And I think we're gonna finish up with that. And again, this is going to be the first segment in a multi-segment show on the 321. We're going to get into, I'm going to do some different refinishes on some of the bridges. We're going to do some refinishing the screws. We're going to make some adjustments. We're going to go through the eccentric adjustments. We're going to go through the chronograph adjustments. We're going to go through pulling this watch into beat. We're going to do the case work on it. Actually have the case, you know, that we came on the watch. We have the case right here, and we are going to actually do this case. We're going to switch the pushers on it. We're going to do everything. We're going to, you know, completely take this case down. And this is actually the case, and it's, you know, stamped inside 1965, which is just a beautiful, you know, it's a beautiful example of a 321 Speedmaster. Dot over 90 bezel. Beautiful piece. I'm going to enjoy doing this. I hope everybody else is going to enjoy it as well. With that, I think we're going to toast out, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. So I hope everyone comes back and enjoys this segment. Give me your feedback and everything else, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you.